Hi, Melita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian, and today I will be talking about the January book tag. This book tag I've done a couple times now, but it was created by Jan over at Jan Agaton. I will leave her channel as well as her 2026 video down in the description down below. She's done this for a couple years now, I think 4 or 5, and I've done this for 2 or 3 at this point, and I just like it as kind of like a wrap up for the previous year. I tried again this year to like do a 2025 wrap up, and ultimately by the time I was done done filming, I was just like, I'm not gonna want to edit this, and I don't, because it's a lot of like screenshots and organizing things, and it's just a lot. I already have issue like motivating myself to edit, and so making it more complicated than it needs to be doesn't make me want to do it. So we're gonna do it this way. Let's take a moment though to appreciate the mug. Little ghosty mug, very on point for the creator of this book tag, hence also the dark lip. So let's go ahead with question 1. Question 1 is, what was your last and first, if you remember, book that you read for the year? So my first book for 2025 was The Fox Wife by Yang-Shi Chu. I have read from this author before. I absolutely love The Ghost Bride, and I've also read The Night Tiger and enjoyed it for the most part. I can't say I remember a whole lot about it. Remember reading it. It didn't match how I felt about The Ghost Bride. This one I also enjoyed. I rated it 3 stars, I believe, 3.5. And I was actually had hoped to finish this one in 2024 because I've been doing the A to Z challenge for the last couple of years, and X was all I needed. And for X, in my mind, it just needs to be in the title somewhere. And so this was the last one I needed, and I didn't get to finish it in 2024, so it rolled over to 2025, and I kind of just accepted that, okay, well, I didn't finish the A to Z challenge in 2024, but I've knocked off the X for 2025. Everything else should be easy. Little did I know. I'll talk about that later. But The Fox Wife is a historical fiction. We're in 1908 Manchuria. We are following this woman who is a fox, and she is trying to find someone because she wants revenge. Something happened and she wants revenge. But we're also having another perspective of this detective who's also on the fox's trail, unbeknownst to him originally, because he originally gets hired to figure out who a woman is whose body ended up being discovered dead on the doorstep of a restaurant, which is really bad luck. So he starts off with that, but ends up, we get to know about of his history and how he's been kind of obsessed with foxes since he was a kid, and then he soon realizes that he's on a fox's trail, essentially. This was really interesting. I still don't quite think I quite enjoyed it as much as The Ghost Bride, but I still did enjoy it for the most part. And then my last book for 2025 was The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is if you don't know, prequel of sorts to The Lord of the Rings. This was like my 4th or 5th reread of this book. I absolutely love it. Basically I just needed one more book to complete my yearly challenge for 2025, and I was like, you know what, I want to reread this. Why not in 2025 with a book that I know I will enjoy? And so I ended up listening to it. Actually, it's my 2nd time listening to it with Andy Serkis as the narrator. So Andy Serkis plays Gollum in the movies and has said that he was really inspired by his cast members of the movies when it came to narrating the books. And I know that the first time that I listened to it, when it came to Gollum coming into the story, I was like, wait, is this full cast? And that because I didn't know who Andy Serkis was, and then my brother's like, no, and explained who Andy Serkis was. I'm like, oh, okay, because that didn't sound like Martin Sheen or Ian McKellen, but he gets really close to sounding like Sir Ian McKellen. So, and he's really great at singing some of the songs in here. And even through this reread, I realized that I had favorite scenes because I got excited as they were coming up. and I kind of just made note of them. So I really enjoy when the characters are being clever. So like when Gandalf is introducing the dwarves and Bilbo to Bjorn with his storytelling, enticing Bjorn into the story, as well as when Bilbo starts gaining his courage and luring spiders away from the dwarves by singing and baiting them. Absolutely love, as well as when Bilbo introduces himself to Smaug in riddles to talk to the dragon, and it's I love it. So yeah, if you didn't know, this is a like prequel to the Lord of the Rings. We're following Bilbo Baggins, who is a hobbit who like one day gets a visit from Gandalf the wizard, and Gandalf kind of looks at him and goes, "You need an adventure." And Bilbo's like, "I really don't. Like hobbits don't like adventures." He's like, "Yeah, but you're a took." Because that's his Bilbo's mom is a took. Is a took, which is a family in Hobbiton. And Bilbo's like, "Yeah, I think I'm good." And Gandalf is like, "No, you need an adventure." And I think either later that night or the next day, 13 dwarves end up showing up and basically like eating all the food in his house and like making themselves comfortable for a meeting on how they're going to take back their mountain. It's like a lonely mountain that was taken over by a dragon like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Bilbo gets like intrigued but still doesn't really want to go, but he is curious, and I think it's kind of just forced out into this adventure. It's really fun. I really enjoy it. It's a fun way to kind of explore Middle Earth without like spending 10 pages about a rock like we do in Lord of the Rings. Question 2 is, what is your first read for this year going to be? It is now January 19th. I have finished several books by now, so I didn't intend for this one to be necessarily my first book, but I am happy that it turned out to be so, and that is Every Day I Read 53 Ways to Get Closer to Books by Hoang Bo Rum, translated by Shauna Tan. I believe this is translated from Korean. So this is a nonfiction collection of essays about asking like trying to answer the question of like, why do we read? What is it that we hope to take away from the intimate personal experience of reading for pleasure? Yeah, it was really great. It like Hoang Bo Rum ended up going into some things that I kind of already like had inklings of, but kind of helped expand them. There was like moments she talked about reading expansively versus reading deeply and what you can do in order to do that. Hoang Bo Rum also, I read a book from her in 2025, and it was the Welcome to the Hyun Nam Dong Bookshop. So it kind of talks about her experience as an author, even if she's not a well-known author, and like how she went into like had graduated from college and went into, I think it was like a date like she graduated with like a computer science degree and ended up working for, I think it was like a phone company, and just like writing code to do updates and make things run better. And after a while she just like almost right off the bat she wasn't happy with that at all, so ended up quitting her job to be an author. I don't know, it was just a fun read, and throughout several books that I have read in 2026 so far, I've caught myself like thinking back to this read. So thank you so much to Libro FM for this ALC. It was a really nice listen and I really appreciate it. I rated it 5 stars, and I do want a physical copy. I think it would be an awesome reread. I think I'd take, like, it's one of those rereads I feel that I would take something different away every time I reread it. So, and it had a lot of quotable quotes, some that Hoang Bo Rum pulled from other authors or cites from other authors, but some that she did herself. Yeah, really appreciate it. Question 3, share 3 of your reading goals for this year. First and foremost, my reading challenge for this year is to read 75 books. I think that's a good amount to read. I had just hit it in 2025. I feel like it's a good number. The second challenge that I have, or goal for myself, is to read at least 12 books by Indigenous authors, 1 per month for 2026. I did kind of poorly at that this last year, and just kind of want to like make a better effort in doing that this year. The same with like nonfiction. Not that I didn't do well last year. I think like I did over 24, so over 2 books, nonfiction books per month, but I would like to do more. I am really curious on like Huangbo Rum's terms, reading more expansively and reading more deeply. So I want to push myself to read more nonfiction books, but I don't necessarily have a set number because I think I'm pretty good at doing it anyway. I want another reading goal for myself is to read more physically. I heavily rely on audiobooks, which is not a bad thing. I absolutely love them. Reading is reading. I'm still consuming the narrative, and I absolutely love it because I'm able to do other things, and that's like, which is great because there's so many things to do, but at the same time I want to push myself to find time to just sit and relax, like for an hour, like a day if possible, to physically sit down and physically read, to like not be pushed into thinking that I need to be doing something productive while I'm like listening, or that every hour of every day that I'm awake needs to be going to something productive or making me money or cleaning or whatever. I would like to see more finished physical books at my end of year stats by the end of this year. So already I'm kind of pushing that when it comes to just before we go to bed. That's like an easy way. It's not always quite an hour, but like by the time we get into bed, no more scrolling. I want to physically read, and I think that will help in terms of getting to sleep. Particularly the social media right now is like nuts because of what's going on in the world, and it just stresses me out. So, and I get that that's a very privileged position that I can just go, nope, I'm not going to scroll and I'm not going to pay attention to this right now because it's not happening directly to me. I acknowledge that, and I'm sorry if you're not able to do that. I hope that you guys are safe. I really am. It's scary out there. Put that down and pick up a book and read that and kind of calm myself down before I go to sleep. But I hope to add more time throughout the day to do that as well. Question 4 is share 3 of your most anticipated titles. 3 titles I can think of right off the top of my head are already on my 24 of 2026. I've already technically talked about these on my 24 of 2026, but they still remain like, I mean, they are some of my most anticipated titles, and that's why they're on my 24 of 2026, so apologies, but I'm going to talk about them again. The first is The Fox and the Devil. This one is expected to be published March 10th, and it is like fantasy, horror, vampires, lesbian romance, and we're following Aniki, who has a complicated relationship with her father, Abraham Van Helsing, who's a doctor, scientist, and madman devoted to studying vampires. But she comes home one night to find him murdered, and a surreally beautiful woman looming over his body, a woman who leaves no trace other than the dreams and nightmares that plague Aniki every night. And so Aniki, spurred by her desire for vengeance, arms herself with the latest forensic and investigatory techniques and puts together a team of detectives to catch this mysterious serial killer because her father isn't the only dead body in her wake. So that's all I know, that's all I want to know. This is an absolutely gorgeous cover, but I will say that I have read Kirsten White before. I read Hyde and I wasn't that impressed, but I'm gonna try with this one. Next, we have Moss in Space. This is by Rebecca Thorne, and the first in the Moss in Space series. And this is expected to come out July 7th. And it is a science fiction, cozy adult fantasy with possible romance. And we're following Torian Rasner, who finally bought a starship. Contrary to Amelia's assessment, who believes that it's a meteoric sign of stupidity. Yes, the starship has moss growing on it. It's been abandoned for centuries. But for Torian, it's a sign of freedom, despite what her ex-captain has said. So that's all I know. That's all I really want to know. Rebecca Thorne also did the Can't Spell Treason Without Tea series, which I read the first one, and that was fun. I need to move on to the second one, but this one I'm excited about. And then the third anticipated book that I'm super excited about, this is like the one that I'm like, I want it now, is Ode to the Half Broken. by Suzanne Palmer. This is expected to come out April 28th, and it is a science fiction fantasy dystopian, and we are following an old robot who was there when the world nearly ended 40 years ago. They don't want to think about what happened. They don't want to think about what role they played. They are hiding out in isolation in an abandoned ruins of an old mill in the former New York Botanical Garden, disinterested in what is happening in the outside world. But one day, they realize someone out there has not forgotten about them, and they are attacked. Their person vandalized, one of their legs stolen, and they set out to find the thief, accompanied by a cyborg dog and a human mechanic. And the cover is gorgeous, and I can't wait for this. So, question 5, which goals did you reach / not reach last year? So I reached my goal of reading 75 books for 2025. Like I said, The Hobbit was my final one, and I was more than happy to have that like a week before the year was due to end. Like, I could feel myself like getting that eagerness of like, I could push myself. I could really push myself and try to reach 80, or I can reread something and just kind of take my time with it. And I leaned into that of just like, no, if you push yourself, it's going to land on a number that you're going to feel unsatisfied with. 75 is a good, like, solid number. Who are you competing with? Just calm down and end the year on something that you're going to like. Mostly because every year I end up getting way too bogged into, like, if I end the year on this book, what does that mean? Or if I start the year with this book, what does that mean? What does that mean for the rest of the year? And it's so weird. So I've been trying to fight against that. And so this year, when it came up, I was just like, oh, I should reread The Hobbit, which actually is Jan's, was inspired by Jan, because she ended up reading The Hobbit for the first time, and it just kind of talking with her and other folks in her Patreon just made me think, like, I do want to reread this. And so a week before the new year ended, or before the year ended, I was like, I'm going to reread The Hobbit, and I'm going to take my time with it, and that's going to be my last book, and I'm okay with it being my last book. So I was really happy with that. I mentioned that I wasn't able to complete the A to Z challenge. So I have like a collection of challenges, and you may have seen from my January TBR or January hopefuls video. A lot of these that I mentioned in that video I have done for the last couple of years. And so the A to Z challenge I wasn't able to complete. I was missing J, Q, and U. So yeah, was not able to complete that. And like I said, I did not do well in terms of reading books by Indigenous authors. I think I only completed 5 of them. And though I didn't have a specific goal in mind for 2025 and reading more of them, I like know myself better than that, and that I knew it was anticipated for me to read it, even though if I didn't set the goal specifically. So I'm kind of disappointed in myself for that. Question 6. Are there new releases you've heard of that you have no desire to read? Yeah, probably. Anything by Riley Sager, I tend to just ignore. I really just don't give a shit. It's one of those things that I'm sure is because everybody else is so hyped about him, that as soon it reaches a certain hypedness, a certain popularity, I'm just like, no, I don't want to. I don't know what it is. Like, Brad hates it because it happens with movies too. Though to a certain degree with books and certain movies, I've just heard things and I'm just like, I would just rather not. So with Riley Sager particularly, I'm just like, there's some things that he's like tweeted that I'm just like, dude, and I'm just like, there's something about it that about him that I'm just like, I'm okay, actually. So I really would just rather not. I unfortunately am just like not interested in the new Abby Jimenez, mostly because it's the second book in the Say You'll Remember Me series that she did. So Say You'll Remember Me was the first book, and that was released in 2025. And if you haven't seen my most disappointed or worst books of 2025, that was one of them. It was just a little too real for me. And I'm just not interested in reading the second one in that series. So I don't know, Emily Henry is becoming one that I'm just like hesitant, because Great Big Beautiful Life was also on that list, and that was also put out this last year. I know that right now Emily Henry doesn't have anything to be released in 2026, but I feel like pending, I'm gonna be hesitant because just, I don't know. I'm gonna be hesitant, I think. Oh, and probably anything by V.E. Schwab. They have this partnership with another author, and like I'm kind of interested, like it's on my radar, but ultimately I'm in absolutely no rush to read it, and in no rush to pay money for it, because V.E. Schwab, I'm finding, has great premises, but their execution doesn't match up with how I think it should be. So yeah. Question 7. What are some reading habits you want to change this year, if any? So I kind of talked about them. I want to read more physically, but I also kind of want to get more into science fiction. I have been interested in them, science fiction, before, but mostly like what I want to find is more like cozy sci-fi. I mentioned that before. I also want to like read more deeply and basically find some non-fictions. Like I'm already realizing I'm starting to do this, so because I recently read a couple books that made me realize that I really do enjoy books with food in it, both fiction and non-fiction. So particularly with non-fiction, I like memoirs that deal with food and food as a cultural identity, and I'd love to read more into those. I actually, like, to the point where I put up a Reddit post and just like, suggest me a book, and some of the books that come to mind is like Crying in H Mart, Slow Noodles, Tastes Like War. I'd love to find more books like those from other backgrounds, not necessarily white backgrounds, like preferably BIPOC, just because I've not to like put all whiteness into Anthony Bourdain, but I have read Kitchen Confidential. It was fine, but I just find that I connect more to BIPOC authors than I do with white authors. So I'm sure there's authors out there that are white authors out there that are exceptions, but that's just my thinking right now. And even fiction books about food I enjoy. Like I recently just finished the second book in the Legends and Latte series, and even though that isn't specifically about food, it does like play with the senses a bit in terms of food, right? Both the Legends and Lattes and Bookshelves and Bone Dust play with the senses and like mention pastries, right? So I'd like more books with that. The two books that come to mind that I really enjoyed that like made me want to eat is Sourdough by Robin Sloan and Aftertaste by Daria Lavelle. Daria Lavelle, like Aftertaste, not so much, like just because there was a lot of food, and while Sourdough was specifically like sourdough bread in a spicy soup. Like I read that book 5+ years ago. Still think about it. Like I want to do a reread of it actually. And it's like I loved that of just like we just focused on one food. Aftertaste focused on many foods, and some of them sounded good and others was kind of like a little weird. But I liked the emotion that it brought out for me, so I'd love to do that. I'd love to like explore more of that, but I also love to explore that but with like nature books. Like Braiding Sweetgrass is one of my favorite books of all time. Same with Gathering Moss. Anything by Sar Montgomery I tend to enjoy, but I want to like dig deeper into it. Like what are some other authors, other books to consume? Like I want like trying basically like following this train of thought. I want to follow this thread of this particular book genre, if that makes sense. That's what I want to do. I don't know if that made any sense. Question 8 is, are there any adaptations you're excited about? No, I'm not a movie or like TV person. If I had it my way, I would be watching Guys Grocery Games, Tournament of Champions, what other ones do I watch? Grand Tour, and like Catch and Coke videos off YouTube like every day during dinner. But I have to throw in a movie every now and then to satisfy a plot line that Brad craves. So I am not a movie person, which Brad thinks is hilarious because I'm also in charge of getting movies at the library that I work at. I love documentaries. Don't get me wrong. There are some movies that I do enjoy. I just am one of those people that just prefer to rewatch movies that I know are comfortable, because it's one of those things where I'm sitting and watching and I have to be doing something with my hands, so I'm kind of paying attention to that as opposed to the movie, and I don't want the movie to distract me from that. So no, I'm not in tune with any of the adaptations that are coming out, nor am I really that interested. It's also because once I read a book, I do not want to know how the director changes what, because no. I very much have to watch the movie or adaptation first and then read the source material to then better not get mad at the director's choices. Question 9 is favorite bookish memory of last year. I would definitely have to say that the first one for sure was getting into the lair, which is Jan Agaton's Patreon, and reading either Full Moon or Bloody Read for the month of January, whichever one it was, but it was Lights Out. That dark romance. It's not even so much that book was good, but it made me crack up so hard because it was just kind of ridiculous, and it made the discussions that we had hilarious. The second one I would have to say is that a friend and I here locally ended up creating a reading collective called the Beargrass Reading Collective. So it's like a book club, and we have buddy reads occasionally, but it's mostly on Discord, and it's just a really fun time, and it's so far all local native people, and we're constantly just kind of going, this is what we're currently reading, and making comments when we can. There's I think there's 20 of us in the group, but only 5 of us are really active. But every so often, we'll get little snippets of what people are reading, and it's just really fun. And particularly as we were getting into fall, we started really kind of going, okay, we should do monthly buddy reads. And we're okay, let's go ahead and do this. And we did it I was trying to do good and be going okay, what kind of genre do you guys want to do? And fantasy won out, so I'm okay, well, here's some suggested titles, and everyone and helped reiterating please suggest titles, these are only suggestions. We ended up going with A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, because it was something that I wanted to reread in order to move on to the second book. And I was kind of nervous because I know that a lot of people on booktube were this is super slow, there's so much detail, this is just so much world building, and just a lot. It's just a lot. I'm oh, I don't have high hope for this. But it turns out everybody really, really enjoyed it, and immediately we made The Last Graduate the following month's buddy read. And it was just really fun to just do that. And then even the third book, as soon as people were done with the second book, they didn't even want to wait until the next month. They just started another buddy read. I had to take a break. I am not done with the series yet, but I just, after the second book, I'm because I was listening to it audibly, and just the way the narrator was speaking, it reminded me of an uptight, bitchy Hermione Granger. And so I'm just I need some time away from this narrator for a little bit. So I'm trying real hard and to not read the discussion posts in the Discord, but I am excited to eventually get to them and know that they're there, particularly because as I've done this before with another buddy read. Like, I was late to it and I started putting like my posts into the discussion, and I knew my friend particularly was seeing them and was like waiting and anticipating, because by the time I got to the conclusion, like I gave my thoughts on the review, she was just like, I was waiting for you to get to this part. So that was really fun. I'm so glad that we did that. I hope we can do more in-person stuff this coming year, or this year. This coming year. We're in this year now. I hope we can do more stuff in person. And question 10, carryovers from last year that you still plan on finishing. Yes, some of them I basically already talked about this in my January hopefuls. Some that I've already like started reading in 2025 and wanted to like finish in January. There is quite a few too that I had started throughout the year that I just had to put a pause on. I don't remember what those are. So ultimately the answer to this question is yes. And I think I'm doing pretty good in terms of getting through them. You'll see in my January wrap up. But yeah. So yeah, that is the January book tag. I had questions kind of throughout the rest, but I implore you, if you want to answer some of them, if you know of any books, fiction or nonfiction, that deal with food, or that some of your favorite that deal with like nature, animals, or something like that, along the lines of like Robin Wall Kimmerer or Simon Montgomery, please let me know. I'm curious and I would love some recommendations. Otherwise, if you made it to the end of this video, let's go ahead and put a bat emoji. Let's kind of keep on theme with that. And I hope to see you in another video very soon. Chew.